The future of wind, we're at a crossroads right now where it's a matter of making a lot of relatively large wind turbines for land use, what we call onshore wind turbines. What our limitations are there is that how can we transport them? We can only transport such big items, 15 foot in diameter, to go down the highway. So we have a limit on how big of diameter towers can we make, how big diameter blades can we make at the end right here so you can transport them down the road. How big can you make the nacelle, gearbox, generator, and so on to transport them down the road? And we're reaching a max right now where we, for onshore wind turbines, either need to modularize, and there's a lot of companies out there that are modularizing things. Towers, for example, have been work on modularizing towers for many years. Blades can be shipped in 2 different pieces and literally glued together once you get back out to site. The nacelle can be transported in the hub, the main shaft, the gearbox, the generator separately and assembled on site for onshore use. The other thing for onshore is the cranes are not big enough. You're going to have to modularize things so that a crane can actually lift it up there, because you're talking 100 metric tons being lifted up to 400 feet. There's only so many cranes that are available. Now you can custom do it all, but then we go back to capital cost, and then is your bill going to be skyrocketing because of that? So that equilibrium is being found right now. Is it 3.5 megawatts or is it 5 megawatt turbines? It's probably somewhere in that range before another revolutionary step is going to have to be taken instead of just the evolutionary steps that the turbines have gone through now. So that's the one side of the why for the future on wind. The other side is offshore, and quite literally the sky's the limit, because for offshore, many of the developments have been in how much power can we possibly get out of a wind turbine and still have it sitting on a foundation down on the ocean floor, but more so, how can you make them float? So there's these floating platforms right now, and the floating platforms have to live up to the wave action, the heaving up and down, the load on the turbine on top of it, and then of course you can't tilt it too far because stuff is going to start falling off. So there we're talking, where we're onshore are talking 5 or 6 megawatts. We're offshore talking 20 megawatts, because the crane sizing is almost unlimited. Where onshore here you can get a 600-800 ton crane relatively easily. You can get a 2,000 ton crane offshore in a heartbeat. And so offshore is one of those things where I don't even dare to predict, but they're just going to get bigger. They're going to start, instead of being embedded into the seabed, they're going to be floating, and they're going to be put in places where the population density is high, meaning Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, in these areas where it's not smart, it's not practical to take up a large amount of land mass to put on onshore turbines. Now finally we're at a spot where the population density is, we can float turbines out there, and that power can then be green. Imagine having a large wind farm outside of New York, where all of a sudden New York could be carbon neutral in what I think is less than 20 years. That's the future. Then the future is not just in wind, but the future is connecting wind and solar with storage, one way or the other, whether it's hydrogen storage, whether it's anhydrous ammonia storage, battery storage, just like you plug your battery into a wall and you store it up and you use that power on your phone when you're out and about. Just much bigger. I mean, container size, 40-foot container sized, 40, 50 of them in a row, right? But many times we use, or all the time, we use more electricity during the day where the sun is shining. And so it's a load following kind of thing, whereas during the day, use solar power and the wind, and then at night, we'll either have stored electricity and or using the wind power. So the combination of the two also winter summer makes a lot of sense, where in the wintertime it's usually more windy, but there's also usually less sunshine hours. In the summertime you get lower wind speed, generally lower wind speed, but you also get a lower air density because the air is a higher temperature, but you get a lot more sunshine. So wind and solar combined, I think we're going to start looking at this a lot more holistically, where renewable power becomes your primary source, and that comes through wind, solar, hydrogen, battery storage, etc.